Captain Maria Santos stood in the middle of the great council hall. Her hands were locked in glowing metal chains that burned her skin. Around her, hundreds of alien beings sat in tall chairs, looking down at her like she was dirt. The room was huge, with walls that reached up so high she could barely see the top. Strange lights floated in the air, and the sound of angry voices filled every corner. Maria had worked for 5 long years to bring peace between Earth and the alien worlds. She had learned their languages, followed their rules, and tried to make friends with species that looked nothing like humans. She had been Earth's voice in this place, fighting for her people's right to join the galactic family. Now they wanted her dead. The charges against her were all lies. They said she had killed innocent aliens. They said she had destroyed entire planets. They said she was a war criminal who deserved to die. But Maria knew the truth. The blue crystal aliens called the Zephyrians had made up these stories because they were afraid of humans. Humans learned too fast. Humans built ships too quickly. Humans asked too many questions and didn't follow the old rules that had kept the galaxy the same for thousands of years. The other aliens were scared that humans would become too strong, so they decided to get rid of the problem before it got bigger. Commander Jake Morrison sat in the viewing area, watching his friend and teacher face death. He wanted to help her, but there were only 20 humans in the entire building. The rest were aliens, and they all seemed happy to see Maria die. Jake's hands shook with anger, but he could do nothing. The lead judge was a tall, thin creature with 4 arms and skin, like tree bark. It spoke in a voice that sounded like wind through dead leaves. Maria Santos of Earth, you have been found guilty of crimes against all living beings. The punishment is death. Maria lifted her head and looked straight at the Zephyrian leader. This alien looked like a walking diamond, with a body made of blue crystal that caught the light and threw it back in rainbow colors. Its face had no expression, but Maria could feel its satisfaction. You think killing me will stop my people? Maria said. Her voice was calm, but there was something dangerous in her eyes. You have no idea what you just started. The Zephyrian leader made a sound like breaking glass, which Maria knew was laughter. Humans are weak, it said. Without their leader, they will crawl back to their little planet and hide. But Jake Morrison heard something else in Maria's words. Something that made his blood run cold. He had known Maria for 10 years, had served under her command, had seen her make impossible decisions in desperate situations. When she spoke like that, with that quiet, deadly calm, it meant someone was going to pay a terrible price. The execution chamber was a small room next to the main hall. Maria walked there with her head high, even though the energy chains made every step painful. The aliens followed like a parade, wanting to watch the human die. The killing machine was simple, a large gun that shot pure energy, hot enough to turn a person into nothing but light and heat. They strapped Maria to a metal chair and pointed the weapon at her chest. Any last words? Asked the tree bark judge. Maria looked around the room, at all the alien faces. Some looked happy, some looked scared, some looked like they felt sorry for her but were too afraid to speak up. I want you all to remember this day, she said. Remember that you killed someone who tried to help you. Remember that you chose fear over friendship. And when the darkness comes for you, remember that you made it yourselves. The Zephyrian leader pressed a button. The energy beam hit Maria in the chest, and she screamed once before her body turned into bright light and disappeared. The chains fell to the floor with a crash. Where Maria Santos had been sitting, there was nothing but empty air and the smell of burned metal. The aliens cheered. They shook hands and made happy noises in their strange languages. The human threat was over. Earth would be cut off from the rest of the galaxy, left alone to think about what happened when they tried to rise above their place. Jake Morrison was escorted back to the human ship, along with the rest of the Earth delegation. As they flew away from the council station, he looked back through the window at the massive structure where his friend had died. His heart was full of anger and sadness, but also something else. Fear. Because he remembered the stories Maria used to tell about old Earth legends. Stories about witches who lived in the deep woods, who could come back from the dead to punish those who wronged them. Stories about a creature called Baba Yaga, who ground the bones of evil men to make her bread. And as their ship jumped into hyperspace, Jake could swear he felt something watching them from the darkness between stars. Something that had once been human but was now something much more dangerous. Back on Earth, strange things began to happen. Scientists detected unusual energy readings in deep space. Computers started showing error messages in languages that didn't exist. And sometimes late at night, people reported seeing a woman's face in their dreams. A face they didn't recognize but somehow knew was important. The Galactic Council thought they had solved their human problem. They had no idea that some things, once awakened, could never be put back to sleep. And some people, once killed, refused to stay dead. The hunt was about to begin. Dr. Lisa Hayes sat alone in her underground lab, 3 miles beneath the Rocky Mountains. The room was cold and dark except for the blue glow of computer screens. She had been working for 6 months straight, barely eating, never sleeping more than 2 hours at a time. Her hands shook as she typed, but she could not stop. She had made a promise to her dead friend. Lisa had been Maria's best friend since college. They had studied together, worked together, and dreamed together about the day humans would join the galactic community. When Maria was chosen to be Earth's ambassador, Lisa had been so proud. When Maria was murdered, Lisa had felt like part of her own soul died too, but Maria had left something behind, hidden in her personal computer files, protected by codes that only Lisa would understand, were research notes about something impossible, something that Maria had been working on in secret for 2 years before her death. The files talked about human consciousness as energy. They explained how thoughts and memories might exist as patterns in space itself, like radio waves that never stop traveling. Maria had believed that when a person died, their mind might continue to exist somewhere in the universe, waiting to be found. Lisa read through hundreds of pages of research. Most scientists would have called it crazy, but Maria had always been ahead of everyone else, always pushing into areas that seemed impossible. And the math was perfect. The equations worked. The theory was sound. The hardest part was finding proof that Maria's consciousness still existed somewhere. Lisa built special machines that could detect the tiniest energy patterns in space. She pointed them toward the spot where the Council station orbited, where Maria had died. For weeks, she found nothing but empty static. Then, on a cold Tuesday morning, the machines started beeping. They had found something, a pattern in the background energy of space that repeated every few seconds. When Lisa fed the pattern into her computer and cleaned up the signal, she almost cried. It was Maria's brainwave pattern, the same unique rhythm that Lisa had recorded years ago during their college experiments. Somehow, impossibly, Maria's mind was still out there, floating in the darkness between stars. Lisa called her old friend Carl Porter, an engineer who had worked with Maria on spacecraft design. She also contacted Amy Chen, a physicist who specialized in energy research. Both of them had loved Maria like a sister, and both of them wanted revenge against the aliens who had killed her. "What you're asking is impossible," Carl said when Lisa explained her plan. They were meeting in the hidden lab, far from any government listening devices. "Maria's mind is energy now," Lisa said, "but energy needs something to hold it, to give it shape. We need to build her a new body." Amy looked at the research notes with wide eyes. "This technology doesn't exist. We would need to create matter from pure thought, build something that could hold a human soul. Then we learn how," Lisa said. "We have alien technology from the crashed ships. We have Maria's research, and we have something the aliens don't understand about humans." "What's that?" Carl asked. Lisa smiled, but it was not a happy smile. "We never give up, especially when someone we love has been wronged. The work took 18 months. They built their lab deeper underground, where no satellites could detect their experiments. They studied every piece of alien technology they could find, learning how their enemies manipulated energy and matter. They tested thousands of combinations, failed countless times, and started over again and again. Slowly, they began to succeed. First, they learned how to grab Maria's consciousness from space and hold it in their computers. Her mind was still there, still thinking, still remembering everything that had happened to her. But she was trapped, unable to speak or move or affect the physical world. Next, they had to build her a body. Not a normal human body, but something new. Something that could exist in the real world, but also travel through space as pure energy. They used metals that didn't exist on Earth, crystals taken from alien ships, and energy patterns that human science had never seen before. The hardest part was connecting Maria's mind to her new body. They had to be perfect. One mistake would destroy her consciousness forever, and Lisa would lose her friend a second time. On a stormy night in December, exactly 2 years after Maria's execution, they were ready for the final test. Lisa's hands were shaking as she started the machines. Electricity filled the air, making their hair stand up. The lab was filled with light brighter than the sun, and then, in the middle of all that chaos, a figure began to form. She looked like Maria, but different. Her skin seemed to glow with its own light. Her eyes were darker than space itself, filled with stars and angry fire. When she moved, reality seemed to bend around her, like she was too big for the normal world. "Lisa," Maria said, and her voice sounded like music and thunder at the same time. "Thank you for bringing me back." But Lisa could see that this was not the same person who had died on the council station. The Maria who stood before them had been changed by death and rebirth. She had become something more than human, something that existed between the world of the living and the realm of energy and thought. "Do you remember?" Lisa asked quietly. Maria's eyes flashed with cold fire. "I remember everything, every lie they told, every alien who voted for my death, every moment of pain as they burned away my body." She raised her hand, and the metal walls of the lab began to bend and twist like clay. They wanted to destroy humanity's champion. Instead, they created something much worse. Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. She had brought back her friend, but she had also unleashed something ancient and terrible upon the galaxy, something that would make the aliens remember why Earth's old stories spoke of monsters that came back from the dead to punish the wicked. The hunt was about to begin, and Maria Santos was no longer just human. She had become humanity's dark angel of revenge. 6 months after Maria's resurrection, strange reports began reaching Earth from across the galaxy. Mining stations on the edge of Zephyrian space were going silent. Trade ships were disappearing between star systems, and the few survivors all told the same impossible story about a woman who could walk through walls and bend reality with her mind. The first attack happened on a small mining station called Kepler 7. The Zephyrians had built it to harvest rare crystals from an asteroid field. 50 alien workers lived there, far from any help. They thought they were safe in the middle of nowhere. They were wrong. Security cameras showed what happened, but the footage made no sense. A human woman simply appeared in the main corridor, walking out of empty air like she had always been there. She looked around calmly, studying the blue crystal aliens as they ran and screamed. "My name is Maria Santos," she said in perfect Zephyrian language. "Your people killed me 2 years ago. I've come to return the favor." The station's weapons fired at her, but the energy beams passed right through her body like she was made of smoke. She raised her hand and the metal walls began to sing. The sound grew louder and louder until the crystal aliens couldn't stand it anymore. Their bodies, made of living crystal, began to crack and shatter from the vibrations. When rescue ships arrived 3 days later, they found the station intact but empty. The only signs of life were 20 survivors floating in escape pods, their minds broken by what they had seen. They kept repeating the same words over and over. "The dead woman came for us. The dead woman remembers." Admiral Ray Tucker, now in charge of Earth's space forces, was called to a secret meeting with government leaders. They showed him videos from the attack, audio recordings from the survivors, and intelligence reports from across the galaxy. "Is this one of ours?" asked the president. Ray studied the footage of the woman walking through solid walls. He recognized the face, even though the eyes were different now. They held depths that seemed to contain dying stars. "Her name was Maria Santos," Ray said quietly. "She was our ambassador to the Galactic Council. They executed her for crimes she didn't commit." "Was?" the president asked. Ray was quiet for a long time. "Sir, I watched her die. I saw the energy beam turn her body into light. But if that's really her in this footage, then death wasn't the end of her story." The attacks continued, each one more terrible than the last. A Zephyrian warship was found drifting in space. Its crew turned into living crystal statues. A trading post reported seeing a woman made of pure energy tear through their defenses like paper. Military commanders began having nightmares about a figure with iron teeth who whispered their names in languages that hurt to hear. But Maria wasn't just killing randomly. She was hunting specific targets. Every alien who had been in the council chamber when she died was marked for death. She had a list and she was working through it one by one. The Andorian trade minister was found in his office, his body completely frozen. The ice was so cold that it burned anyone who touched it. Security footage showed Maria walking through his locked door, her breath creating frost in the air around her. "You voted for my death," she told him as he cowered behind his desk. "You believed lies about my people because it was easier than thinking for yourself." She touched his forehead with one finger, and the cold spread through his body like poison. His last words were an apology that came too late. The Vorthan military commander thought he was smarter. He surrounded himself with robot guards and computer systems that could think faster than any living being. His fortress was a masterpiece of technology, protected by weapons that could destroy entire planets. None of it mattered. Maria appeared in his command center like a ghost, materializing from the shadows. But this time she wasn't alone. The computers around her began to flicker and change, showing faces on their screens. Human faces, speaking in voices full of anger. "You killed our champion," the computer voices said in unison. "Now we live in your machines. Now we are part of everything you built." The robot guards turned on their master, following orders from a dead woman who had learned to speak the language of artificial minds. The Vorthan commander died screaming as his own technology consumed him, leaving behind only an empty shell, and the sound of human laughter echoing through electronic circuits. News of the attack spread through the galaxy like a disease. Alien leaders who had voted for Maria's execution began to disappear from public view, hiding behind armies and energy shields. They hired the best mercenaries, bought the most advanced weapons, and surrounded themselves with every protection they could imagine. It didn't help. Maria could travel through dimensions that normal beings couldn't even see. She could turn her body into pure energy and reform anywhere she chose. She could speak to machines and make them betray their creators. Most terrifyingly, she seemed to know things she shouldn't know, as if death had taught her secrets about the universe that living people couldn't understand. The Keth ambassador tried to run. He took his fastest ship and fled toward the galaxy's edge, hoping to hide in the darkness between stars. Maria found him anyway. She appeared in his ship's cockpit while he was sleeping, sitting in the pilot's chair like she belonged there. When he woke up and saw her, he started crying. "Please," he begged. "I was just following orders. I didn't want to vote for your death." Maria tilted her head, studying him like he was an interesting insect. "But you did vote," she said. "You chose fear over justice. You let innocent people die because it was easier than standing up for what was right." She didn't kill him quickly. Instead, she touched his mind and showed him what it felt like to be betrayed by everyone you trusted. She made him experience Maria's final moments, the pain and confusion and desperate hope that someone would speak up for her. When the Keth ambassador died, his last words were Maria's name, spoken like a prayer to a god who had no mercy left to give. By now, the galaxy was in panic. The most powerful civilizations found themselves helpless against one angry human who refused to stay dead. Their advanced technology, their superior numbers, their thousands of years of experience meant nothing against someone who could rewrite the rules of reality itself. But Maria was saving her special attention for the ones who had started it all. The Zephyrians had created this monster when they decided to destroy humanity's hope. Now they were going to learn why Earth's oldest stories warned people about disturbing the graves of the angry dead. The hunt was far from over, and the worst was yet to come. Ambassador Zekthara of the Zephyrian Empire had not slept in 3 months. He sat in the center of the most protected facility in the galaxy, surrounded by energy shields that could stop a supernova. Around him stood 1,000 robot guards, each one programmed to kill anything that moved without permission. The walls were made of metal that existed in 7 dimensions at once, impossible to walk through or break. None of it would be enough. Zekthara knew this, because he had seen what happened to the others. 47 council members had voted for Maria Santos's death. 46 of them were now dead, killed in ways that defied every law of physics and reason. He was the last one left, the crystal being who had planned the whole conspiracy against humanity. The lights in his fortress began to flicker. The robot guards started making strange sounds, their electronic voices speaking words in languages that didn't exist. And then, impossible as it should have been, she was there. Maria Santos stood in the center of the room, her body glowing, with inner fire. She looked exactly as she had 2 years ago, except for her eyes. Those dark depths held the cold fury of deep space and the burning rage of dying stars. "Hello, Zekthara," she said calmly. "We have so much to discuss." The crystal alien tried to run, but his legs wouldn't move. The air around him had turned solid, holding him in place like invisible chains. His robot guards stood frozen, their weapons pointed at the floor. "You were so proud of your plan," Maria continued, walking closer. "Frame the human ambassador for war crimes. Turn the galaxy against Earth. Keep humanity locked away on their little planet where they couldn't threaten your power." Zekthara's crystal body began to crack from fear. We had to protect ourselves. Humans were advancing too quickly. In a few more years, you would have been stronger than all of us." Maria smiled, showing teeth that gleamed like metal. "And now? How do you feel about that choice now?" Before Zekthara could answer, the walls of his fortress began to sing. It was a human song, something from Earth's classical music, but played on crystal structures that turned the melody into something beautiful and terrible. The sound grew, louder and stronger until the Zephyrian's body started to resonate with the music. "This is how my story ends," Maria said as Zekthara began to shatter like a wine glass hit by a hammer. "But it's also how humanity's new story begins." The crystal alien's death scream could be heard across 3 star systems. Halfway across the galaxy, General Pete Williams sat in his office on Luna Base, reading reports that made no sense. Every major alien government was sending messages to Earth, all saying the same thing. They wanted to talk. They wanted to make peace. They wanted to apologize for what had happened to Maria Santos. Pete had served under Maria for 8 years. He knew her better than almost anyone, and he understood what was really happening. The aliens weren't sorry they had killed her. They were terrified of what she had become. His computer screen flickered, and suddenly Maria's face was looking back at him. But this wasn't a video call. She was somehow inside the computer itself, existing as pure information and will. "Hello, Pete," she said, and her voice came from every speaker in the room at once. "How are things on Earth?" "Maria." Pete leaned back in his chair, trying to look calm even though his heart was racing. "I heard you were dead." She laughed, and the sound made the windows vibrate. "Death is just another country to visit. I've been busy there, learning new things, making new friends, but now I'm ready to come home. The government knows what you've been doing out there. They're scared of you." "Good. They should be." Maria's image leaned forward, and Pete could see stars moving in her eyes. "But I'm not their enemy. I never was. Everything I've done has been for humanity's benefit." Pete looked at the reports on his desk. Alien worlds begging for mercy. Trade routes reopening to human ships. Former enemies offering technology and resources as gifts. The galaxy's balance of power had shifted completely in just 2 years. "What do you want from us?" he asked. "Nothing. I want to give you something." The screen changed, showing star maps and shipping routes and detailed information about every alien civilization in the galaxy. "I've been collecting intelligence while I hunted my killers. I know every weakness, every secret, every hidden resource in known space. Pete stared at the information scrolling past. It was worth more than all the treasure on Earth. Why are you giving this to us? Because I can't do what comes next alone. The galaxy needs a new leader, Pete. Someone strong enough to keep the peace, smart enough to prevent another war, and human enough to remember what it's like to be the underdog. Before Pete could ask what she meant, alarms began ringing throughout Luna Base. On the main screen, a massive fleet was approaching Earth. Hundreds of alien ships from dozens of different species, all flying together in formation. Don't worry, Maria's voice said calmly. They're here to surrender. The meeting took place in Earth's orbital station, the same place where Maria had said goodbye to her planet 2 years before. Representatives from every major alien government sat around a huge table, their faces showing fear and exhaustion. At the head of the table sat President Martinez of Earth, flanked by human military and diplomatic officials. But everyone in the room knew who was really in charge. Maria appeared as she always did now, walking out of empty air like she had always been there. She took a seat at the table, and reality seemed to bend around her presence. The lights dimmed, slightly, and everyone could hear a sound like distant thunder. "Gentlemen," she said, looking around the table at the aliens who had once condemned her to death. "Let's discuss the new arrangement." The treaty was simple, but revolutionary. Earth would be granted full membership in the galactic community, with voting rights equal to any other world. Human ships could travel freely through all star systems. Human colonies could be established on any unoccupied planet. And most importantly, any species that threatened human interests would answer directly to Maria Santos. "We don't understand," said the Vorthan representative, a slug-like creature whose skin was constantly changing colors. "What are you now? Are you still human?" Maria smiled, and for a moment she looked exactly like the ambassador they remembered from 2 years ago. "I'm what you made me. I'm humanity's guardian angel and avenging demon, rolled into one package. I'm the thing that goes bump in the night when evil creatures think they're safe." She stood up, and her form began to shift and change. Sometimes she looked human. Sometimes she looked like pure energy. And sometimes, just for a second, she looked like something from Earth's oldest nightmares, with iron teeth and eyes like burning coals. "You wanted to destroy humanity's champion," she said, her voice echoing from everywhere at once. "Instead, you created something much more useful. You gave my people a protector who can never be killed, never be stopped, and never be bought or threatened." The alien representative signed the treaty with shaking hands. As the meeting ended and the aliens hurried back to their ships, Pete Williams stayed behind. He found Maria standing by the observation window, looking out at the stars. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now humanity takes its place among the stars," she said. "And I make sure no one ever tries to put us back in our cage." Pete nodded, but he had to ask one more question. "Are you happy, Maria? Was the revenge worth it?" She was quiet for a long time, and when she answered, her voice sounded almost human again. "I'm not Maria Santos anymore, Pete. That woman died in a council chamber 2 years ago. I'm what came after. I'm what humanity needed me to become." She turned to look at him, and he saw something in her eyes that made him step back. It wasn't anger or hatred. It was something much more frightening. It was love. The terrible, protective love of someone who would burn down the universe to keep her people safe. "The galaxy wanted to see what happens when you kill humanity's hope," she said. "Now they know. You get something much worse in return." Outside the station, human ships were already launching toward distant stars, carrying colonists and explorers and traders to worlds that had been forbidden to them just days before. The age of human expansion had begun, protected by a guardian who had crawled back from death itself to ensure her people's survival. The council had killed Maria Santos, but in her place, they had created something that would haunt their nightmares for generations to come. They had created Baba Yaga, the witch who lived between worlds and ground the bones of evil men to make her bread. and she was just getting started.